Hello. Welcome to Stitchcraft sessions number 2. We're working on this Expecto Patronum kit. I started streaming it yesterday, and this is how far we got. So today I'm going to finish off the pecto here and the patronum, and then after that I'm going to be finishing up this back hoop, aka the hoop butt, and we'll be gluing it down here and it will look like this. So this is the finished piece, so it'll look something like this once we're done today. Yeah, feel free to ask any questions if you join later, say hi in chat, and I hope this helps. I'll be sharing any tips and tricks as I go along, maybe some review from yesterday's stream, and every 20 minutes we're gonna do Harry Potter trivia, and if chat is quiet, then I'll be answering them myself and talking about what I love about Harry Potter. So yeah, let's dive in. So this Expecto Patronum design is from an embroidery kit that I created. It comes with a little booklet, and in the booklet we'll look at the stitch guide for review. So Expecto here is going to be in split stitch in black, and then the patronum is going to be back stitch in black. So I think I'm going to finish off Expecto first and then jump into patronum. All right, I'm going to keep that open here. So I'm going to take my needle and I need to put some thread in here. So let me do that first actually. So I'm going to have black embroidery floss. Embroidery floss comes in 6 strands. So I need to separate out 3, and you can do this in multiple ways, but the one that definitely prevents the most tangles is doing it one by one. So I'll show you how to do that, and then I'll show you alternatives after. So with 1 strand at a time, you're going to separate out just one at the end there, and then with your left hand, hold the rest just a little bit away from the end with your thumb and your pointer finger, and you're going to grab the one with your other hand, and keeping this steady, you're going to use the other hand to pull, and you can see it's bunching up on the bottom there, but that's okay. I have successfully grabbed my 1 strand of thread. I'm going to put it to the side, and I'm going to do that again. So we're going to straighten out the 5 pieces there, grab another one, and do the same thing. So just making sure I'm holding this steady. And you'll see it's bunching up at the bottom, but it does not tangle. So that's number 2. And then one last one for 3. So separate one out, keep this steady, and use the other hand to pull. And so I've got 3 off to the side. I'm gonna put that to the side for now. And the remaining 3 on the 6 will stay here, and I'm going to thread it through the needle. So I've got my needle, pointy end, careful not to poke yourself, and I've got a hole right there, the eye of the needle. So to thread your needle, what I like to do is make sure they're the same length. So it's a bit frayed, this one, so I'm going to take my scissors and just cut it so it's nice and straight, all the same length. And then I'm going to give it a little lick to flatten it with my fingers, and that makes it a lot easier to put through the eye of the needle. It's very fiddly, especially if it's your first time, so it takes a little bit of practice. And then I'm going to pull it through the eye of the needle here, just so it's hanging out a few inches. And then the third step is to make a knot at the other end. And I'm gonna give it a little lick again just so it's easier. Make a loop with your finger and put that end through the loop to make a knot. You can double knot if you'd like. Depending on the weave of your fabric, one knot should be fine if the fabric doesn't have huge holes. But if you want to be safe, do a double knot. And then there's a little bit hanging off the end there. All right, so I've got my needle and thread ready to go. So I'm gonna pick up where I left off with this expecto word. I was using split stitch here, and I'll show you how to do that. So we're going to be following along this design here, all of these lines and curves with our needle and thread. So I'm going to start off right here to start my split stitch. Pull through, and then a short distance away, following that line, I'm going to poke my needle in and then pull through from the back. Next, I'm going to go a short distance away again, still following that line. And if it's your first time, it can be tough to find where exactly the needle is going to go from the back. So you might be like poking everywhere and it's just not going in that line where you want. So what you can do is take your needle, and instead of poking all the way through, you're just going to slightly put pressure on it and kind of move it all around. And you'll see that like little dip in the fabric to see where your needle is. So you can kind of see I'm following this P here. So that's a little tip for you. So now I can poke my needle through now that I know where it is and pull through. So split stitch gets its name from the fact that it splits the thread previous to where you are. So this was the stitch that we just created. So we're going to go right through the middle of that stitch and pull through, effectively splitting it. It's different from backstitch because backstitch, which you can see here where I did the squiggly spells, we're going in and out of the same hole of the previous stitch. So you can see those holes right there. Whereas split, you don't see any holes because you're splitting the stitch. So we're just going to follow this design, and when we go on a curve, the stitches get shorter and shorter so that you're able to follow that curve more closely. All right, and as I pulled through, I see I've got this little piece of thread. I don't know if you can see, but right there, there's like something poking out, and I don't want that at the front of my piece. So if I turn back, I can see that the knot that I created, the thread that was kind of left over there, has been stuck here while I was stitching. And it's made its way to the front of the thread, or the front of the hoop, which is not what I want. So what I do is take my needle and weave it under that little loop and just kind of tug it up so that it's not stuck anymore, and flatten it over towards there where I'm not working so that it doesn't cost me any grief anymore. Oh, my camera has froze, so let me do a little disconnect here and do it again to try and fix it. All right, go to wide angle. There we go. Tech difficulties. And let me zoom in again so you can see. All right, hopefully that looks good now. Hello, I'm going to finish up my sparkles while watching. Yay! That's awesome. Hope the sparkles work out for you. So, still going in the same way as I've been doing, just splitting that previous stitch. Oop, I got a little knot there, so I just take my fingers and pull it away, and as I'm pulling it, the knot undoes itself depending on the knot, but usually when you pull it out like that, it usually will untangle itself. And keep going. Says, I had that happen to me during my wand, but I didn't notice in time, so had to snip off the little thread in the front. Yeah, when it gets stuck like that, that works too. As long as you don't snip off the thread that you actually want on the front. But yes, what I recommend while you're stitching is to really slow down and take a look at that stitch that you just made. And does it look good? Is there anything that you want to fix about it? It's easier to fix it like right when you made that mistake instead of at the very end. But I totally, like, embroidery is meant to be relaxing and like to force me to slow down and not look at screens as much. But sometimes I just get super into a design and I'm like rushing to finish it just so I can see that final piece. I've just got some like white fuzz on there that I'm trying to get out. So heading to another curve here, so just making sure my stitches are nice and tight. I have no idea how good my mic is at picking up background noises, but my cat is starting to yowl to be let outside because she is a part-time outdoor cat. And yesterday she spent all day inside sleeping, recharging, so now I guess she wants out. So we'll see if my mic picks up her requests. So this fabric that I have right now, I've pre-printed on the design for the kit. So this here, it's kind of like slightly gray. It's actually ink from my printer. There's a lot of different ways to transfer patterns to fabric. You can draw it on like straight onto the fabric. You can print it on like I have, and printing I find is easier when it's a more complex design. Like if I wanted to be really precise about how, for example, this patronum, like I want to be the same height all around. If you've got a lot of elements in your design, like drawing it out is gonna take so much longer and it might not be precise. So that's why I like printing. I did start out with drawing it out, and then I discovered printing, and it is great. Saves me a lot of time transferring. Okay, next pro tip, which is something that I covered yesterday, but in case you weren't there. So as I'm sewing, I'm going in and out, and you can see, maybe you can't see because my shirt is black. There we go. So that thread there hanging off is like looping in around itself. So I'm going this way, putting my thread back in, and it's just looping naturally. So this is a recipe for tangles. So what you can do is just let it rest to its natural state. So I'm going to hold my hoop up parallel to the ground like this and just let this go. And it's going to twirl, twirl, twirl until it's like back to its original state, and you can kind of straighten it out a little bit there. Still twirling. Okay. So now after I've done that and I go to sew again, like you can see it's not twirling in around itself anymore, which is good. That's what I want to be working with, because then it just avoids the potential for tangles while you're working. So this is less of a curve now, so I'm going to start lengthening my stitches a little bit, just to give it a little variety in this texture. Split it right in the middle. And then we're back to a little bit of a curve here. So going to shorten my stitches here. As I'm going through that curve. The E looks a tiny bit wonky, so what you can do is try and shape it a little bit here so that it sits how you want it to be. That's okay. It like shifted a little bit. I'm happy with that. Yeah, you just want to make sure that you're covering the design that was printed on or that you drew on, so that it doesn't show in the front of the piece. Well, it is a pretty faint gray, so shouldn't be that huge a deal if you can see it peeking through. So that's the E. And then I'm going to jump to the beginning of the C so that I can kind of pretend like I'm writing it. And it's one continuous line from there. So I'm gonna jump over there and up. But before I keep going, I am at the 20-minute mark. So we're gonna put my needle on this needle minder. So a needle minder is something, it's like a magnet that you put on your hoop. And when you're pausing your work, instead of having this needle kind of hanging loosely, you could do this just so it's safe. Or you have a needle minder and just kind of throw it on there and it automatically keeps your needle safe. All right, so 20 minutes means water break, little hand break, and a trivia question. So like I said, I'm gonna do these, but if chat is quiet, then I'll answer them after a few minutes myself. So, let's do this one. So the category is magical objects. What is the name of a red letter that bears an angry message as sent by Mrs. Weasley to Ron? What is the name of a red letter that bears an angry message as sent by Mrs. Weasley to Ron? And that is from Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Great scene. Love that scene. But what is the name of that red letter? And Mama says, oh no, I have such limited knowledge. That is totally okay. These questions vary in difficulty level. So maybe, and honestly, like something that feels easy to me might not be for other people, because I love Harry Potter trivia. So, the name of the red letter that Mrs. Weasley sent to Ron is called a howler, which is very appropriate because it was basically yelling at him. It looks like an envelope and then kind of transformed into like this talking mouth. So let me just make sure that's the right answer, and it says a howler. Yeah, it's such a good scene. It was terrifying if you would get one. It's like Screamer or something. So close! Yeah. Sorry, I saw that message late. I mean, it's pretty much a Screamer. Okay, so as I tugged here, I felt some resistance that I did not expect. So I'm going to look at the back of my hoop, and right here is where it created a knot. Okay, so knots kind of look like this. There's usually a loop at the top, and then the knot or the tangle is kind of in the middle, which is preventing this whole piece of the thread from sitting straight on the fabric. So what you need to do, and this works like 90% of the time, is take your needle and put it into the center of that loop, and then you pull until the knot, that loop that we just put our needle through, is right on the needle, like it's quite small now. And then I'm going to take it out, take my fingers and smooth it out like this. And magic, it is gone. Yay! So one thing I've wanted to do is take the time to actually understand like the anatomy of that loop and the knot and how it untangles, just because I put the needle through the loop and like pull and it's gone. But I haven't taken the time. But I saw that in like one of the earlier, when I was just binging YouTube for embroidery tips and tricks, and I just remember seeing that and I was like, that is perfect. But yeah, it works 90% of the time, and if it does not work, then depending on the size of that loop, I usually just leave it and try to flatten it out and anchor it with other stitches, so kind of like stitch over it in the back as I'm just normally stitching. But it really depends on your piece and whether or not it will show through the front. So, but yeah, that's how I untangle my tangles in the back. And that can still happen even when you try to prevent the tangles from that trick that I showed where you do this and let it untwirl to its normal state. All right, so now here is where I could do this in a couple of ways. And there's no like right way to do it. Like you can start and stop stitching however, wherever you'd like. But here now my thought process is, where do I go next? I could jump to here and follow this line all the way over here, so that I could then jump over here at the top of the T and go all the way down and then finish that off. I think I can do that because my thread length is still pretty long. Depending on your thread length, like if you had really short thread left, you could just keep going like this, finish your thread, and then start back here with a new piece of thread and finish that off. So really, we're trying to optimize, I'm trying to optimize for how long my jumps will be. So like here when I did the sparkles, like it was these long of a jump, which is not that bad. I won't really show through the back because it's gonna be covered by this, so it's fine. So it's really up to preference where you'd go. So I think what I'll do is do that first one I said, where I'll go through the T first and then go down, just because I think it's going to be the least amount of jumps. Even though, like, when you think about when you're writing this, you'd probably do this first and then cross your T. So really just preference. So I'm going to jump over here. And then, yeah, another alternative is if you don't want to jump all the way there, if you think it's too long, then I would just stop and weave this through and start like knot the rest and then keep going. But I'm gonna just jump. Hopefully that made sense. But yeah, that's kind of just thinking through your design and looking at your thread length and deciding where to go from there. Says, I'm curious to see how you do the T because I think I did it very strangely. And the thing is, no one can tell like how you did it, right? Like they don't know if you did the cross first or this line first. So whatever decision you made, I won't even know if it was strange or not. I don't know if there is a category of strange. And when I'm talking about like this concept of jumping in between designs, I'm talking about, let me see, it's kind of hard to show on camera though, but if you put your hoop up to the light, maybe this will work. But if you put your hoop up to the light, you can see the back of the hoop because this is a white fabric, and so you'll see the jumps from the stars. You'll see where I went from the middle of the T over to where I crossed it. Yeah, you can't see it on camera, but if you're working on one, that's what I mean by jumps. But I don't worry too much about it because when you back the hoop and you look at it the same way, like this piece of cardstock is blocking that light from shining through, so you don't see those jumps and you don't have to worry about it. But other people might back their hoop differently, so the jumps could be something that you need to plan out more or avoid them entirely. I think it's just so much more effort to finish off your thread, knot it again, just to avoid those jumps. So usually just do them. Oop. So my end of the thread is getting shorter, so I'm just going to give it a tug so that it gives me more space to work. And I guess as a quick review, I'm holding my needle I'm pulling my needle through with my thumb and my pointer finger, but then when the needle is out of the fabric, when I'm pulling it, I use my other 3 fingers to grab the base of it and then pull through, so that I'm making sure that this thread that's through the eye of the needle is staying in there and that it doesn't escape the needle. So that's how I like to hold my needle and thread. Mom says, I can see so many of the jumps on mine in the light, especially in the dark thread. Yes, the dark thread definitely shows up more. But yeah, when we back it, it should fix that problem. And some fabric is thinner than others, so you might not be able to get away with those black thread jumps. So that is when you would finish off your thread in the back and then re-knot it and start where you want to start. I'm enjoying this beat. I really wish I could play some Harry Potter ambiance music, like how I did for the stitch alongs earlier this week, which were just a Zoom call. But I have a feeling it's like I'd have to deal with copyright or something, so I just avoided it. Now I'm going to jump over to the top of the T here. And split that stitch. And I'm getting quite short with my thread here. I think I'm just gonna keep going until it's quite short, because I just like to do that. And if you're just starting out, then you might stop here and weave it through, because you want to make sure you have enough thread to weave through in the back to anchor your stitches in place and make sure they don't get pulled out. Just gonna make this T a little bit straighter, guide it to place, and this is gonna be my last stitch right there. So I'm gonna turn over, and to finish off your thread, you're going to weave it in through the stitches that you've already made. So I've got one here that's pretty close, so just going to weave my needle in or under the stitches, and pull through, and then do it again. And what I tend to do is I take my finger in the back and push the fabric up a little bit, and that helps when you're working on weaving that needle under, just to give it a little more room to squeak under there. So do it 3 or 4 times, and then before the last pull, I'm going to take my needle and put it in the center of that last loop. And what that's going to do is make a little knot just to anchor it better. And that's how much thread I have left. So going to snip it off, being careful to only snip off the thread you don't want and not the thread that is part of your stitches. So I got a little glass of thread scraps that I just throw that in there. Whoops. Oh. My crochet got stuck in the little staple here, so it just pulled everything with it. Do you know what would happen if you just tied a knot in the end instead of weaving through? I have not tried that. I find it hard, or actually, yes, I have tried that. So when you're just making a knot at the end, you need to make sure that the knot is like really up against the fabric there. Like the knot is like right there at the end. Otherwise, when you try to like pull this up, then it might not be straight, like flush against the fabric. And you want to make sure it's flush up against the fabric like that. So if you imagine a knot at the end, there could be a little bit of thread in between the fabric and the knot, which means this thread might be loose, and you really want to make sure that this thread is sitting flat. It's like going to stay flat. So the best way to do that is to weave through, so that that tension, you're like really pulling on the thread so that it stays flat. I hope that makes sense. Right, I need my black thread. So I'm gonna grab those 3 that I had left over from the previous time that I split it, and just make sure it's straight. Got a little bit of a tangle in the bottom there. Ah. And there's a little knot there that I don't want. So I'm gonna make sure that that is not the case. Let's see. So just going to separate this from each other. There we go. There we go. Alright, so just want to make sure it's nice and good, no tangles. Makes sense. Okay, good. Oh, So instead of threading it like how I usually do, which is with licking it and flattening it a little bit, I just got these needle threaders yesterday. While I was doing the stitch alongs from this week with a few people, I was noticing that threading the needle for beginners was quite the challenge. So I'm going to try out this needle threader to see if it works, and then maybe I'll add it to the kit. So needle threader usually has this little handle, some type of handle, and then these two prongs that form like a diamond. And what you're going to do is put this end into the hole of the needle, and then you're going to take your thread and put it in this much bigger hole in the diamond. It's much bigger than the eye of the needle, just a little bit. And then you're going to take your needle and slide it all the way to the end. And before you pull through, because it does take quite a bit of a tug, I'm going to hold this diamond end and then tug. Whoop, a little pop. So it does take quite a bit of a tug. And oh my god, it's threaded. So I don't use needle threaders that often because the ones that I bought, this little prong diamond here, like it just completely dislodges from the handle. So I tend to not trust needle threaders and just learn to do it myself. But for beginners, it might be worth it. So I'm gonna try it out. So you can do a knot like I showed you in the beginning of just looping through your finger and putting it inside, but I'm going to show you what's called the quilter's knot, which I showed on stream yesterday. But this is my favorite way to do a knot. So I'm going to take, oh, Emma says, wow, so much easier. Yes, definitely for beginners. It's needle threaders save a lot of time. So I might look into putting that in the kit. But yeah, quilter's knot. So I'm going to take my needle and hold it like this, parallel to my thread. So like this. And then use the hand that's holding the thread, the needle, to hold the thread as well. And then I'm going to wrap the thread around 3 or 4 times. Hold the wrapped around piece and the needle like this. Push the needle through that wrapped around piece and pull it. And pull, 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 keeping this steady. Pull and all the way. And what that does is make a knot at the end. Boop. So that's my favorite way to do a knot. And I'm just gonna snip off a bit of that thread at the end there, just so it's not so long. Oh, Bean has joined. Hello, Bean. Just looking out the window now. All right, so I got my needle threaded. I missed my 20-minute mark, so let's do another trivia question. Okay, magical objects. The Marauders map was created by a group of friends formed of Wormtail, Padfoot, Prongs, and who is the last person? So the Marauders map was created by a group of friends formed of Wormtail, Padfoot, Prongs, and blank. And that is from the 4th movie, Goblet of Fire. Which is one of my favorite movies from the series because I love the wizarding the Tri-Wizard Cup. I think it's so cool to see all the different like schools that are there, and they're all competing. And of course we get the iconic scene of Dumbledore running towards Harry, screaming, "Harry, did you put your name in the Goblet of Fire?" Which is highly controversial because in the books he literally says, it literally says he asked calmly. So that was quite the directing decision. Yeah, who's that last person? I think I'm going to speed up slightly here because I want to finish the stitching hopefully before the hour mark. I will not know this one for sure. That's okay. Last stream, my sister was there. She didn't know the trivia questions either, or the answers. So she pretty much just guessed Dobby for everything. But the last person who was in the Marauders, so the Marauders are Wormtail, Padfoot, Prongs, and the last one is Moony. And Moony is Remus Lupin. And they gave him that nickname because, spoiler alert, turns into a werewolf during a full moon. Would actually love to see either a series or a movie or something about the Marauders era, so Harry's parents' generation, and just like what was that like in Hogwarts, like Voldemort was just starting to come into power, see what James and Lily's whole history was. I think it's super interesting, and just what shenanigans the Marauders got up to while they were in school. Also a younger McGonagall, like, berating them. Gotta work on my posture while I am stitching for sure. And this is not how I normally would stitch. Like, this is just so you can see it on the camera. So it's like even a bit harder. Usually I'm stitching like this. Just like leaned back, hoop pretty close to my face, like this, so I can see what's happening. And usually I have a show on in the background, or an audiobook, so I can have something to listen to or watch while I'm stitching. Embroidery is great for that. The only thing is you can't watch something that you would need subtitles for, because you can't really like, well, you could, it's just harder to keep on glancing up and down to read the subtitles every time someone says something. And I also tend to not do it for shows where like I know that I need to see what's on the screen, like thematically. But for something like Harry Potter that I've seen so many times, it's perfect. Where's my needle? There it is. Okay, so sometimes when you're stitching close to the edge, like this might happen if you're using my crochet hoop. So just give it a little adjustment there. That might also happen like when your excess fabric outside of the hoop is too long. So just make sure you are readjusting as you're stitching. Almost at the end of Expecto. And then you're pulling your needle in and out, just making sure that you're not hitting something with your needle. So I don't know if you can tell from the angle, but sometimes I pull my needle and it's like super close to my face that I could poke my face. So just making sure you're mindful of where you're pulling your needle. And then even sometimes, like when someone's beside me, like when I'm stitching beside my partner, so as not to hit my face, I'll pull over here, which is super close to his face, which is also not good. So don't hurt yourself or anyone else. So I'm at the edge here, and even though I'm technically done that pattern, I just want to make sure this last stitch that I did is split. So I'm just gonna go a little bit out and then split it, just so it's not a lone thread that's not split. And there we go. Expecto is done. Coming together. We just have this part left. I'm super excited. So I'm gonna weave this through, and I've still got like quite a long piece of thread, so I'm going to be reusing it for the patronum. So I'm going to weave in and out here a couple times. And then the last time, I'm going to put it in the center of that loop to further anchor it. And snip. I got this cute embroidery stork scissors that are quite popular. So I've seen like so many embroidery people have these stork scissors, so I thought I should get them for myself too. All right, last little bit here. So I'm gonna do my knot again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it. Make sure this piece is sticking out and pull through. And I got my knot. Okay, so for Patronum, this is going to be in backstitch, as the stitch guide says. But the difference here is, here with the backstitch, I kind of just went along the line, varied my the length of my stitches. For Patronum, I'm actually going to do 2 stitches as the height. So I'll actually show you what that looks like. So this is 1 backstitch, 2 backstitch. 1 backstitch, 2 backstitch, and then even when you're going like on a diagonal, 1 backstitch, 2 backstitch. So it just gives it like a different type of style, where this line here going through it is kind of that middle point. You could do like 3 or 4 too. I'm just going to try it with 2. But then when you're going in on a curve, obviously you can't do just 2, otherwise it looks like a triangle. So there I would do more backstitch in there. Stork scissors are so nostalgic for me. My mom embroidered a lot when I was little, and she even had them back then. What? That's so cool. So I guess they've been around for a while. They're just iconic. Yeah, it looks like a little stork, like opening and closing its mouth. I've seen other colors, like silver, rose gold, but gold is the one I tried. So let me just, there we go. So again, 2 stitches, so I'm going to go right up on that middle point. Oh, and I accidentally pulled my knot out, so I'm going to let go of it and put it back in there. And go to the top. And with backstitch, instead of going through the middle of the stitch that we just did, we're going to go through the exact same hole from that previous stitch that we did, and that is backstitch. And then I'm going to go up again and do the P. So going to follow that line and shorten my stitches as I'm going through this curve. The P, and it's got, so the style of these letters here, they've got like kind of little ticks here, like tick 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 tick. So I'm going to go down to that little tick in the P, and these stitches are quite short, but it just gives it some style. So I do the ticks last, just so it kind of hides like the ends of the back stitch. So I'm going to go to the middle point of the A here because I want my height to be 2 stitches, and come back in on the same hole and do that again on the other side, going into the same hole and finishing that little point, and going to cross that A. So here, like, I ended my stitches right there on the right hand side, so I'm going to start from the other side, just gonna find that hole and and then go back in to the other side. There, same hole. Oop. And then I'm gonna finish off the little ticks. So there's one at the top. And there's two on the bottom. So we're just gonna jump to the bottom. Maybe I'll start from this side. And one tick. And the next. There we go. Onto the T. So I'm just gonna find like that middle point there so that it's consistent. And then go up and back in through the same hole. Going to go back up and cross my T. And then I'm not quite done the T, like there's still that little tick down here, but I don't want to jump all the way back down. So as I'm thinking through this, I'm thinking maybe I'll just go to the R first and go down and then go back to that tick and then tick this one. So there's no like right way to do this. As you're stitching, you're thinking about where should I go next? Where can I go next? And what would be the least amount of jumps or the closest jumps that I can make. So I'm gonna finish off this R towards the bottom and then go, actually, no, I'm going to do the tick now because my, where did I leave off? This one. That was my last one. So I'm going to finish off the tick on the bottom of the T. And then go whoop, and do the R here. But yeah, again, there's no right or wrong here. And then I'm gonna go from the bottom of the R over to the top. Ooh, there we go. Wasn't finding the hole I wanted to get in there. And I'm following this curve along. Oh, missed my break. Oops. See? Always got stitching. A little break for the hands. Water. Oh, water's good. Okay. Let's do animals and magical creatures category. Which creatures work in Gringotts Bank? So, which creatures work in Gringotts Bank? They show up in the first movie when Harry goes to Gringotts with Hagrid, and they also show up in the very last movie when they go into Gringotts and like break in. They have to get the they have to get the cup from Bellatrix's vault. So I'm jumping over to the O now here. Just trying to find. There you go. So again, finding the middle point of this O. And trying to do 2 stitches in height. Oh my gosh, I actually know this one because I just watched the last movie last month, Goblins! Yay! Yes, that is correct. Goblins. Good job. We got 1 question from chat answered. Although I am happy to just answer all of these and talk about them. But yeah, goblins. When I went to Wizarding World of Harry Potter a few years ago, they have a ride there where it's like the Gringotts Bank ride, and we had to wait for quite a while, but the wait was so good because you're like in a line and you're going through Gringotts Bank and there's goblins like all around. And they looked so real and they were like moving around. It was so cool. Yay. And as I'm stitching, I'm now realizing that I forgot to do the little tick on the R that I said I would go back to. So I could undo my stitches, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go down to the end, circle back here, and then go back. But that is okay. It's okay. No one will know. How would they know? Unless they watch this stream, I guess. But okay, so I'm actually running out of thread here. So I think what I'm going to do is do this tick, jump over to finish that R that I forgot about, and then finish it off there because this is a good length. So I'm gonna try and find close by stitches that I can go through. So this one here looks pretty good. Gonna weave it in through all those. Weave it in a few times here again. I'm just going under these stitches and then pulling it inside that loop before the last weave. And snip. Cool. I've just got 3 more letters left. Need to grab another black here. And I showed you how to do it one at a time, so now I'm going to show you the other method, which is my little arm method. Only Harry Potter could make a bank interesting. Yes, so true. So what I'm going to do is separate these a little bit to get it started, and I'm doing 3 and 3. So 3 and 3, and then I'm going to take the other end and anchor it under my arm like this, and then I'm going to separate it, slowly pulling, so it's pulling out of my arm and pulling it the rest of the way through. And that's how I usually separate my threads, just kind of anchoring it here, and it prevents tangles like happening at the bottom, but it does look awkward. Oh, let me use my needle threader again just to get used to doing that, so I can test it out in the kit. So put the needle threader in there, put the thread through that big hole, and slide the, oh, it's not focused, slide the needle all the way to the end. Hold this little diamond prong and tug. Oh, tug. Oh my goodness. This is why I don't trust needle threaders. There we go. It's, oh, what's happening? I think it's frayed, so look at that. The thread is all frayed, which is not good. That's not what I want. So I'm going to cut that and start again. So I'm just pulling out these threads. Needle threader has betrayed me. Oh, don't go on my piece. I don't know how that happened. Was it my thread? Maybe. Okay. Take two. Maybe not so easy. Yeah, maybe not. It could also be the needle I'm using. Like maybe the eye of the needle is too small for it. All right, slide through, do the tug again. Oh, I got it, but it's fraying. Oh, see that? It's all frayed there, which is fine because it's near the end. Like that's not something I'm gonna use, but it is, I don't like that. I do not like that. Maybe it's the thread, maybe it's the needle threader. I don't know. My thread is quite short now, but that's okay. There's only 3 letters left, so hopefully it will survive those 3 letters. So I'm just doing my quilter's knot here to make a knot. And we're going to go where we left off. So I will do, I think I'm gonna go, yeah, I'll go this way with the N like I'm writing it. Same hole. And go down to that midpoint. I'm almost there. I think we're gonna be able to finish this off. Whoop! What is that? Piece of fabric. Fabric lint. I think we're gonna be able to finish this off in the 2 hours, but we'll see. Might go over a few minutes. So I've got like this white stuff coming through, so I just want to make sure, like, what is that? I want to make sure that that's not coming through. So I'm just using my needle to kind of flick it out of the way. There we go. I think it was just a piece of fabric lint, but it is gone now. So before I go all the way up, I'm going to, oh, excuse me, finish off this little tick. I have to get used to these camera angles here so that you can see what I'm doing more. Going through the same hole. I'm just gonna flatten it a bit better there. So there we go. Twirly twirl, and good. Alright, and I'm going to finish these ticks on the end. And on to the U. do the little ticks. Just make sure it's flat. And last letter, your letters, MM, and my letters. Go back up. Diagonal is just one stitch. And back up. And I'm gonna do the little ticks here. Oh, that's not quite. I don't like the look of that. So I'm gonna undo that, and to undo, gonna grab, oh no. Oh, that's why I didn't like that needle threader. So the frayed edge totally snipped off there. So what I need to do is find where that ended, which is right here, and snip it all to the same length. And I'm gonna go to my trusted, oh, where's my needle? It's right here. Method of licking and flattening, because this needle threader is not working out. Oop. Just gonna flatten it, and it will go in. Tried and oh my god, I shouldn't have done that yet. Boop, undo. I needed to undo. So get rid of your needle there, and I want to undo this stitch, so I'm gonna weave my needle back out and then go and find it on the other side, which I think is this little stitch there, and pull it back. So I want to redo that stitch because it was a little bit to the left. I can see the hole where I made it and not exactly on the line, and that made it way too close to the diagonal on the M. So I'm just gonna redo. That's okay. There we go. That is a better angle for me. Yeah. I'm gonna go back and do the ticks here. Worried about my thread length because I had to snip off that little bit that frayed, but I want to be able to finish this without rethreading another one. Just gonna go through the same hole here, if it will go in. There. Haha. And go down, and I have 2 ticks to make, so I'm gonna start doing it over here, and boom. And boom. The last stitch. Woohoo! Alright, that's it. So I just need to weave this in here. So just kind of rotating my hoop around to see where is the best angle to weave it in. Whoop. And before that last loop, I'm going to put it through the center of it and make a little knot to anchor. And that is good. Snip. All right. So taking a look at everything, make sure I didn't missed something, but that is pretty much it for stitching, which is good. We have about 40 minutes to finish off the rest, so I'll put this away. But before that, next question and a little break. Okay, this one. The dark arts category. How does Harry Potter destroy Tom Riddle's diary? So this is the second movie, Chamber of Secrets. How does Harry Potter destroy Tom Riddle's diary? Oh, and while we're answering that, I gotta plug in my glue gun. Put this away. How does Harry Potter destroy Tom Riddle's diary? Okay. So, answer is with a basilisk fang. Oh my gosh, the exact same phrase that I used. So Harry defeats the basilisk in the Chamber of Secrets, grabs a fang, and just goes to town. Pretty great scene. So, finishing a hoop. Oh, stabs it with a fang. They had that idea more in the final film, I think. Oh, yeah. I don't remember how they did it in the books. Yeah, I don't remember. Okay. Finishing a hoop. Turn your hoop around to show the back. Admire your hoop butt. That is the technical term. Hoop butt. Trim the excess fabric all around to about 1 centimeter, and then we're going to make cuts vertically to separate it into small sections, and then use the glue gun to glue it on here. And then we're going to finish it up with this cardstock backing. All right, so I'm going to take my big scissors now. These are special fabric scissors. I only use them for fabric, so they're quite sharp. And then I'm going to go all the way around and cut it. But before I do that, I want to make sure my fabric is nice and tight in the hoop and centered and everything. I want it to be tight so that it looks nice. If you're using one of my crochet hoops, you can kind of do this with your thumb and tighten it even more if it needs it, but otherwise should be nice and snug in there. All right, and then I'm gonna take my scissors and snip around here. So I'm gonna do this, yeah, I usually do it like this. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, just making sure that I'm not accidentally cutting that crochet hoop. Hopefully you can see this. Let me zoom in a little bit. All right, so let me show you this for a second. I want to cut it enough so that I can do this, and when I go and flatten it out, it stays kind of in the middle of this inner hoop here. Like if I show you how it is when you're not cutting it, it looks like this. So this fabric is on the back of the hoop, which means it will show through here, which is not what we want. So the length I want is that it stays flat and still glues on to this inner hoop, but that no excess fabric is flattening onto the back of the like this fabric itself on the hoop. So you just want to be careful here. They don't cut too short, but also not too long. So I like to just take off like the ones that are clearly much longer, and then start to finesse it to the length that I want. Okay, so I'm doing little tests here, just seeing if it's the right length. This one's a bit long, so I'm just gonna do a tiny snip. Definitely take your time with it, because you don't want to ruin your piece. You worked so hard on it, spent so much time on it. I want to make sure we're finishing it off right. This one's still along here, I think. Okay. You're just about there. Yeah, good. So just gonna, there's a bunch of like fabric little lint pieces there, so I'm just gonna put that away. Then step 3 is to vertically make cuts to the fabric to separate into small sections all around. So what I mean by that is this. So let's say I start over here. I'm going to cut just into smaller little sections, and that makes it easier to glue it down. And then here, where the top of the piece is, I'm going to make sure that where I cut is going to be to the right of it and to the left of it. So I want to make sure this piece in the center stays together. Where did I leave off? Still got a few. There you go. So it's all in sections now. So when you glue it, it's going to be more manageable. All right. So I'm going to take my glue gun and I'm going to glue the top edge of the hoop, and then I'm going to press the fabric down towards the inside of the hoop. And I think my glue gun is ready. Yep. So let me zoom in. I think it might be easier to see it. Hopefully. So I got my glue gun. Nice and warm. And I'm going to start over here and glue the top edge of that section and press it down. Okay. And so gluing the top edge here and then pressing it down, the glue is kind of going to seep over to the inside, like this inside edge. So I don't need to put glue there. I just put the glue on the top here. Oops. And of course, you make sure you're not burning yourself. So it might depend on the heat of your glue gun. Mine's like not too bad, so I feel pretty okay doing this, but maybe You can either wait a little bit so that it's not as hot when you press it down, or maybe you can wear like thinner gloves, or use like a different surface, like a ruler or something, just to press it down. But generally I'm like, I don't feel the heat at all. So I'm doing this one section at a time. Ooh, glue just seeped out there. All right, and you can see the length of the fabric here. Like, it's just enough to be on the inside edge of the hoop, but not show through like on this back piece. And I always procrastinate this part. Like, I'll finish a hoop and it'll sit for so long before I'm like, all right, I guess I should finish up the back there. Like, that's the last step. I think it just has this like feeling of like, okay, like, am I sure I'm done? Or do I want to fix something? Or do I want to add something? And it's just like this feeling of like finality, like that just kind of scares me. And that's probably why I procrastinate it. Okay, just gonna make sure this piece is nice and tight, because that is the piece that kind of shows in the front there. And the last section. Whoop. All right, something satisfying about watching it get pressed down. Yes, super, super satisfying. Look at that, nice little circle. All right, and then we need to put the cardstock backing on. So that's the last step. Glue the cardstock backing on. So I have this little circle completely cut out to the measurements here so that it sits in there. And I use a little fancy circle cutter for that. So for this one, I like to do it a few sections at a time. So I kind of look at this cardstock and I'm like, okay, I want it to sit like this, but no one's gonna see the back, so it really doesn't matter. But I like to put a little section at a time, press it down, and then kind of do half of it and then do the rest, just so I know it's sitting nicely. Maybe time to zoom out a tiny bit. There. Okay, so that's where I want it to sit. So I'm gonna pop it open a little bit and put the glue in there, just a tiny section. Let it sit. Don't press it down too much, otherwise the glue will seep through. But again, no one's gonna see the back, so. And like my glue is seeping through a tiny bit, that's okay. And just letting it dry there. So that section is on there, but I've still got this. So I'm gonna do about halfway, let it sit, and then do the rest. So just using, I know you can't really see it, but just using my glue gun here to go all around. And before it dries off, Gonna press that down. Ooh. Got some seeping through. That's okay, again, it's the back. And then after that, I'm gonna do the rest. So I got a little opening here. Say goodbye to the hoop butt, cause it's getting covered up. And I'm gonna go the rest of the way through. Doesn't have to be super thick, honestly. Just need some glue in there. All right, there we go. Yay! So I just thought of this, but what I'm gonna do, so I usually put my little sticker on there that says Magical Stitchcraft, but I do want to commemorate this hoop because it's done. And it was the first hoop I did over stream for Stitchcraft sessions, which is my very first little live stream here. So let's put the date, October 23 to 24. (2021) Stitchcraft sessions hoop. Maybe like yay for my first live stream. This one's for me. Yay, live stream hoop. All right, one thing I didn't show here was that if you get the kit, I do have a little loop that I put with it. So this little loop, and that means you can hang it. So you can hang it from the wall with a little hook and it'll stay on there. So I'll have to put one here as well. Let me zoom back out. Cool. I finished kind of early there, which is good. So yeah, that is what I've got. So we did the Expecto Patronum hoop. That was from my embroidery kit. You can find my kit in the next couple weeks. I'll be relaunching it again on my Etsy shop. And now you'll have the live stream to kind of stitch along with it and get all those tips and tricks. Other than that, I'm hoping to do this more regularly. I just have to think of a new design to stitch along with people next. So I'm excited for that. Still got my brain gears going, haven't decided on anything yet. But yeah, thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for joining today. And for anyone that is watching the replay, thanks for watching. Let me know if there's anything specific that you'd like to see for next time, and I will try to do that. Cool, so much fun. Yay, glad you had fun. All right, have a good rest of the weekend, and I will see you around. Bye.